Now, on Philadelphia's #1 college radio station, WHIP, Rational Radio.
What's going on, everybody? You're listening to WHIP Radio, Philly's #1 college radio station. You're listening to Rational Radio, back on the airwaves now. And we're doing something a little bit different this semester. We're starting up a new venture here at WHIP in conjunction with the Temple News. And every Wednesday, we're going to profile a few articles that are in that week's edition. We're going to bring the authors on, the writers on, to talk about what it was like covering the event, kind of whatever was going on beyond the event that couldn't fit into print, and some interesting aspects of the story that maybe you wouldn't be able to see otherwise. And we're going to bring that to you every Wednesday here on Rational Radio now that we are back up and running. So that should be a fun venture. We are definitely excited about it, working with our other campus media partner in bringing you the most up-to-date, the most in-depth news possible. So we are going to kick that off today. We have 3 great articles that we're talking about, 3 very well-written articles here. And the first is something that happened last week, and something that frankly took me by surprise. I'm sure it took others by surprise in the community, in the Temple community, and that is the death of a Temple employee, Stephen Shedrick. He was 58 years old. He was found in his car at the corner of Montgomery and Broad, and police initially went up to his car and tried knocking on the window to see if he was alert, and unfortunately he was pronounced dead. So now we are joined by Julie Christie, who wrote the story. And Julie, it's great to have you on here on this new venture. You're the first person on here. So.
Yeah, it's exciting. I'm very excited.
So basically, kind of walk through the story. What was it like, when you were first assigned the story? Walking up to the scene. I mean, you had someone that died right in their car on the corner of the street.
Yeah. So I got assigned the story by my editor, Steve. He texted me a screenshot of a different conversation he had where somebody had texted him and told him that somebody had died. And so, because I'm the crime beat, I had to go out. And so I just went to the location. There was actually no police activity. A lot of people said there was, but he was found at around, I think 7, somewhere around 7 in the morning. So by the time I got there, it was, I'd say, 10:30, and there was nothing there. So I went back, but I followed up with Charlie Leone, the executive director of campus security, and he told me that a Temple employee had passed away in his car. And so I told Steve, and he just wanted to make sure that I could get onto it. All I had initially was the police report, so I didn't know his name yet. And Charlie's a great guy, so he gave me a lot of really good information. It was initially reported as somebody thought he was sleeping in his car, but when they knocked on the window, as he said, there was no response, so they had to break it, and he was pronounced at the scene by the medical examiner. Later that night, I got an email from a Temple University spokesman, Brandon Lausch, and he told me that the employee's name was Stephen Shedrick, and he also had there's a statement from the university, which was put up on the brief once I got it, pretty much just telling us that he had worked at Temple for 31 years. He was a big person who... a big part of the community. He helped out a lot with the union. I think it's District 1199C.
Yeah.
So after that, it came to trying to reach out to his family. his coworkers who I actually met and talked to. I walked into the digital printing center, and they told me all about him.
And what did some of his coworkers have to say about him? I know you talked about one in here. I don't know if you had the chance to speak to others in there. Kind of what was the general feelings towards him? Was he a good guy?
Yeah, he was definitely a very loved and very well respected man. The digital printing center, it's a small operation. I got lost trying to find it, but that's how small it is. But they do important stuff there. They do all the printing and of really high end stuff. So they do a lot of important work. And Ken Daskus, who I talked to the most, he had known Mr. Shedrick for about 7 years, had worked with him for 3, and one of the things he told me a lot about was how Mr. Shedrick loved to learn new things and just, play with the new technology, which I thought was really cool. They had just gotten in a new machine that he was excited to start using, but didn't get to it.
Oh, such a shame to hear that. I mean, he worked with the university for 31 years. I saw in the article you wrote that he has a sister who actually works in human resources here. So kind of Temple's been a big part of their family, at least for that chunk while they've both worked here. Yeah,
definitely. I couldn't get in touch with her. I couldn't get in touch with any of his immediate family, which is understandable. They're in mourning. This is painful for them. And so I don't have much of the family perspective on him, but definitely the coworker perspective. He was clearly as wonderful a guy at home as he was at work. He cared a lot about his family. According to Mr. Daskus, there was a huge family reunion that he and his family would go to every year down south. I know. I think he had lost his father a couple years ago, or last year. So definitely not the first time this family's dealt with a loss recently, which is sad. And I'm very, very sorry for them, because Mr. Shedrick was definitely a wonderful man.
And do we know, did he go to Temple? Do we know?
We don't know that.
Okay.
He was in the military.
Okay.
We're not sure which branch. Couldn't confirm it, unfortunately. He worked at Temple for 31 years, so even if he didn't attend there as a student, he was still a huge part of the university in whatever way he could be.
It's interesting, reading through this, you see he's been here for 31 years, and, he works in the digital print center. And as a reader, I mean, I'm looking through it and I'm like, digital, we have that? What does that do? This man's been here for 31 years. He's been here longer than I've been alive. And I didn't even know this existed.
Yeah. Going around, so I haven't ever reported on a employee who has died. This is the first time I've done that. But just going around, there's a lot of little organizations and projects around campus that are part of Temple University, that aren't part of it, that are just part of the community. And it's amazing how many there are and how diverse they are, because you have to go out and try to find them. You're not going to just stumble across them unless you're really lucky.
Yeah. And, also looking through this, just thinking about, kind of the reporting that went into it. I mean, how difficult was it for you to, call up the family after he died and say, hey, if you're up to it, how was he? Could you talk about Stephen, what was he like at home, stuff like that? Because just for me thinking about it, I mean, we talk a lot, on Rational Radio about, death and destruction, and oftentimes, it's in regards to something that's happening in the Middle East, right? It's, it's a newspaper article. You don't feel like there's an actual person behind it, right? But now when I'm reading through this, I'm like, wow, this happened, down the street from where I live, where I go to school. And I feel like, reaching out to the family after that would be so hard.
Yeah. Well, in this case, it wasn't very difficult. I tried calling the numbers that I had, and there was just no ringing.
Yeah.
So either wrong numbers that didn't exist, or they took their phones off the line, which is completely understandable. So I didn't have to deal with it for this article. But in past articles, I have spoken to people who've lost family members, and it's still very painful for them to talk about. And it's just really important to make sure that they have their time, and you just got to make sure that you don't push them into something. You want to, because making sure that people go into it feeling comfortable is the most important thing you can do when you're talking to somebody, no matter what the situation is, but especially when you're talking to somebody who's lost a loved one.
Yeah. And now, what do you think was kind of the most interesting part of the story, kind of digging through all this stuff?
I would say what struck me the most, I don't know if it can be considered
yeah,
the most interesting,
yeah.
but what struck me the most is when, when I introduced myself to Ken and I asked him if he could talk to me about Mr. Shedrick. He said, it's really sad, he was thinking about retiring. And that's one of the first things he said, which really hit me because, my dad's nearing retiring age and that kind of stuff. And Mr. Daskis also mentioned, how as you get older, you start worrying more about your health and that sort of thing. So it's just, when people tell me what hit home for them, it kind of hits home for me too.
Yeah. Do we have any kind of indication if he had any pre-existing medical conditions or something that may have happened, where, because I'm just thinking he was in his car and he just died there, was it just natural causes? I think it's certainly possible, but you always wonder, was it a heart attack or was it something else?
Yeah. Talking to police, they definitely think it was natural causes.
Okay.
There might be an initial report within the last couple of days or in a few days from now. I don't know if I'll be able to access that because obviously very personal information, and it's up to the family whether or not they want to share that. In a couple of weeks, there will be a complete test from a medical examiner that'll have the official cause of death. So as far as we know, it was natural causes, which, depending on how you look at it, can be less painful for the family. But just making sure that people get remembered is the important work.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Because even though it is less painful, initially when I read it, I was like, wow, they broke into this guy's car and he was just dead, sitting there, and I was like, what?
Yeah.
And then I was like, no, maybe this is something's going on here. And then after it came out, I'm like, oh my gosh, this actually happened. He was just parked right there on the street.
Yeah. Because he'd get to the university early. Ken told me this, that he would get there at around 6 o'clock in the morning, which he technically wasn't supposed to do because I guess there's some sort of liability reason that employees can't be on campus during a certain amount of time before or after their shift, I guess. But he would get there early anyways because he wanted to get a good parking spot because he had a knee problem. Yeah. And stuff. So
yeah, when I read that in the story, I was like, wow, he got there early so he could get his parking spot. Yeah. Kind of sounds like something I might do, arrive, 45 minutes early just so I could get the one spot. I at dinner every night, I sit in the same seat at the table, I park in the same spot if I'm driving a car, and people are like, Ryan, you're crazy. I'm like, no, this is my routine. And he had his routine, and he wanted that spot because it was easiest for him to get into the building.
Yeah, and also he'd get to work early to make sure that projects were finished for people if he knew they had to come in right away and get them. So his work ethic and the dedication he put into everything he did is so clear. Yeah. Based on, what his coworkers have told me about how he just, I think Ken said if you ask him to do something, he will do everything he can to get it done.
See, that's amazing because, oftentimes, we've certainly talked about it on our show before, the state of education right now, right? And how there are a lot of people, a lot of really great teachers, but I know we've all had really bad teachers. And you just think, it's like, wow, like, how is that person teaching? But then you hear about people like this, right? People who are involved in academics in some way. And it's like, this guy is coming in at 6 a.m. to get stuff done, for people who may need it that morning or later that morning. Yeah. And that I think oftentimes that goes, kind of it's overshadowed by a lot of the negative stuff that's around it.
Yeah, there's always somebody in the background doing something, and as sad as it is for a reason to learn about the background, it's really nice to know that there's people who cared enough to make sure that no matter how big or how small, even if it wasn't academic, they would get it done for you, and they would help you out.
Yeah, no, it's so great to read about this. I mean, even, great in the aspect of, remembering him being great. I mean, certainly, you hate to hear of anybody dying. And so we're calling this little series that we're doing Beyond the Lead. What Beyond the Lead kind of information you have on this story, something that maybe didn't fit in print, but you think is really, really cool, really vital, because oftentimes we talk about it on our show. Sometimes we spend an hour talking about one issue, but we joke if we were on TV, we'd have a minute and a half to tell the whole story. So I didn't know if there was a part of the story that wasn't in there, but it was like, hey, this was wow, like how about that?
Yeah, well, usually the way we write things is the most interesting and most important stuff does get put in. I don't think anything was cut from the article, and because I couldn't reach his family, I don't have too much extra stuff that didn't make it in. But Ken just talked a lot about how Mr. Shedrick went above and beyond with learning new things and throwing himself into his work, because I guess he started out with like manually painting on the ink on papers.
Wow. See, that's interesting. Here we go. Here we are Beyond the Lead. This wow.
So like manually putting the ink on, and now it's all machinery and that kind of stuff, and he'd learn it. And I said earlier there was a new machine that he was excited to learn about, but didn't get to it. So it's just, that was really cool to know that, everybody's excited to learn about something. Yeah, and absolutely. It was cool knowing that about him.
I think that's really interesting. I mean, someone who's been here 31 years, the transition, at least in the equipment that he was using. Manually painting on letters in the digital print center. Now, a machine that probably does it in 5 minutes.
Yeah, I don't know if it was painting on letters, but he definitely had to manually set the ink out, kind of a thing.
Yeah. And now we don't even think about it anymore, because we hit a button and it comes out the other end. Yeah. And here he was actually making it with his hands, and when he saw that, I'm sure there was a sense of pride in, hey, I designed that, or hey, I laid the ink out for that piece. And so you always wonder, do you wish that stayed the same? Like, was there a part of that was cool? I mean, certainly machines get it done quicker, but
yeah, based on the way his coworkers talked about how excited he was to learn new things, it didn't seem like he was longing for the old days. Yeah. He was I got the feeling that he was always moving, always ready for what's next.
Well, that's very cool. Thanks, Julie, for coming on. It's good to have you. Hopefully you'll be back to talk about some happier news, maybe.
I hope so.
Because, we always joke on here that we always talk about depressing news, just in general, around the world, across the country, in Philadelphia, what have you. So we're going to go ahead and take our first break here of the afternoon. You're listening to Beyond the Lead on Rational Radio on WHIP Radio, Philly's #1 college radio station.
Thanks for asking, but I'd rather not send you nude pictures. I'm camera shy. I already said no. It's against my religion. I'm giving my dog a bath, you can have pictures of that. Pressure gives me hives. Under my clothes, I'm a robot. Hold on, let me ask my mom. Sorry, my webcam is broken. I'm worried they'll get passed around school. Unfortunately, I just had my clothes surgically attached to my body. If they got out, I might never be president. I'm already naked, under my clothes. Not even if you were all three Jonas Brothers. I have a rash. I have nudophobia. I have lizard skin. The more you ask, the less I want to. You're not the boss of me. Nudity makes me vomit. I'm a vampire, so I don't show up in pictures anyways. Your badgering has really killed the mood.
When someone is pressuring you to do something you don't want to, how many ways can you say no before they get the message? Let us know at that'snotcool.com. Brought to you by the Ad Council.
All in together now. We can make it better now. Come on, can we do it?
Yeah, you know that we can.
We'll rope it up,
Cause we know how to jump.
we'll roll it out,
Cause we know how to skate.
we'll cut it down,
Cause we know what to eat.
we'll swap it out.
We eat healthy stuff.
Can we do it?
Yeah, you know that we can.
Can we do it?
Yeah, you know that we can.
Yeah, well come on.
Today's a good day to grab your kids and hang out with them for an hour. Dance, walk, play a sport, or cook a healthy meal. Because just moving a little and eating better every day can help make you and your child healthier.
Can we do it?
Yeah, you know that we can.
We'll ball it up,
Cause we know how to hoop.
we'll mess around,
Cause we know how to play.
we'll drop it down,
Cause we know how to dance.
we'll veg it up.
Veggie night and day.
Can we do it?
Search We Can online to find doable tips and activities that you can use every day to keep you and your kids healthy. Remember, that's We Can. A message from the Ad Council, HHS, and NIH's We Can program.
Go Caleb! Come on, hit a homer, Jesse!
Let's go, guys!
Hey, did you guys know that kids who play sports earn more money when they grow up?
Of course. I knew that.
Hey, did you guys know that kids who read books have a bigger vocabulary?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Wow, jinx. Did you guys know that friendly children have more friends?
Oh, yeah, yeah.
That's true. I knew that. Did you guys know that winter babies are better at music?
Everyone knows that.
Oh, yeah?
It's pretty obvious.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
obvious.
Oh, hey, guys, did you know that most people think they're using the right car seat for their kid, but they're not?
Huh, I didn't know that.
I'm pretty sure I knew that.
I'm pretty sure you didn't.
Parents who really know it all know for sure that their child is in the right car seat at the right age and size. Visit safercar.gov/the right seat to make sure your child is protected. Brought to you by the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration and the Ad Council.
Hi, I'm LeVar Burton, and I'm proud to be a book person. Every child deserves to have access to books because children who grow up with books invariably do better in life than children who do not. How do I choose a book? Is it the cover? I guess, sometimes it's the cover, sometimes it's the title. I guess I'm pretty visual, so it's a combination of those two. The first book I remember was Captain's Courageous. When I finished that book, I had become so involved with these characters. So here's the thing. If a book's really, really impressing me and the writing is really, really good, I peek and see what the last paragraph is. Because the endings of books, if it's really, really well done, that ending, that last thought should rock you. I am a book person, and if you're a book person too, read to a child and spark a lifetime of ambition. Join me at bookpeopleunite.org because reading is fundamental. A public service announcement brought to you by Reading is Fundamental, Library of Congress, and the Ad Council.
Welcome back to WHIP Radio, Philly's #1 college radio station. You're listening to Beyond the Lead here on Rational Radio. Thanks for tuning back in. We had a great discussion there with Julie Christie talking about her article that she wrote in the Temple News this week about remembering a Temple University employee who unfortunately passed away. Stephen Shedrick was 58, found in his car on the corner of Montgomery and Broad here on Temple's campus. He had worked here for 31 years. That was a great discussion with Julie, kind of talking about his legacy and what people thought of him. Now, turning to a different subject, something that is definitely been generating a lot of buzz here on campus in recent months, and just recently, yesterday, there was another meeting, and this is talking about the stadium. Yes, the proposed stadium here on Temple's campus, a hot button issue for many in the community, many on campus, and something that really seems like everybody has an opinion about. So now we're going to break this down with Jillian McGoldrick here to talk about her article. So Jillian, thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
So talk a little bit about, this article which you found going to the meeting, the Church of the Advocate. I know the community was allowed to come to this one, right? And so this did have both sides input, and definitely probably a different vibe than yesterday.
Definitely. There was definitely a lot of anger still at this meeting, because at this meeting it was for the Stadium Stompers, which is a collaboration of both community members, students, and faculty, all who oppose the stadium. And so a lot of community members were explaining throughout the meeting their different, I don't even know what word I'm thinking of.
Opinions, views?
Well, opinions,
yeah.
Most of their opinions and views were they just didn't know what was happening.
Yeah.
They felt as if they were getting trampled on by Temple. And students collaborated in a separate group from the community members, in which they discussed how they would take this to the Temple student government meeting that occurred on Monday.
Yeah.
On Monday, and like how they would protest this, because at this meeting at Temple student government, community members were not allowed in. And
yeah, that's what I thought was interesting yesterday, or on Monday, in watching the whole thing unfold, is that they were like, no, like students only.
Yeah, and when it would really be affecting the community, right, who's located off campus.
Right, and so, everybody has an opinion on this. Everybody's got something to say. And, I looked at some of the videos from the meeting that was on Monday, and, I see people up there screaming, just yelling. I don't know, like, is that, like, the best way to go forward with it? Like, I feel like they have a real opportunity here, right? They had President Theobald and Pat Kraft up on the stage, and I feel like instead of screaming at them, just say, hey, here's my concern. Because, when you stand up there and say, I don't want the stadium to be built, you guys are coming in here, and it's like, well, like, calm down, like, so we can talk with you. No, I won't calm down. And so, I feel like they missed an opportunity. I don't know if you see the same thing, but like...
Yeah, no. From what I understand, though, also, I also was a part of an email chain of the students who were planning the protests and what they were going to do. From what I understood, they said that they would be handing a list of quotations from community members to President Theobald before the meeting began.
Okay.
And then I know that it began at least peaceful, and the students came up and they just held "Where is the community" in front of them towards the press. But from that point on, it just slowly digressed.
Because then a lot of it was, then people, at least I saw, some videos, and people are standing up there and say, no stadium, give us higher wages. And I'm like, all right, like, this isn't, we're not talking about that right now.
Yeah. One of the leaders is one of the people who's of the Stadium Stompers is also a leader of 15 Now.
Okay.
So they're pretty closely related, the two.
Okay.
When I went to the meeting, they had a list of facts. And these were actual facts. Some of the things of like how Kenny sent people down to Tulane, who just built a stadium in an urban area, to see what they found. So that's a fact. They had a bunch of other things, but then when it got to what they wanted, it almost felt as if there was no immediate focus other than that they just don't want the stadium. And then they, in different directions, they were pulling towards, like, we want a sexual assault center, or we want higher wages, when these things don't connect.
Right. So, what is, you obviously reported on the event that took place with the community. What are their main concerns?
A lot of their main concerns are if they're going to be displaced.
Okay.
If they're going to be pushed out, if their taxes are going to be raised, if there's going to be large amounts of traffic if there was to be a stadium, and if there would be tailgating, would that be
Right.
disruptive to community life? What else? And one of their other biggest things was that they are saying this isn't the first time. And
Yeah.
they were speaking a lot about how, like, it used to be a joke that Temple would never cross Broad Street cross
Yeah.
west of Broad,
Mhm.
but they have. I live in a dorm off campus, across Broad Street, and so it just slowly Temple is continuing on, and that's something that the community is really worried about.
Yeah.
Another thing that they noted and noticed is that a lot of community members were confused and scared that Temple could take their homes for eminent domain.
Okay.
And that's something that that's scary.
Right. Oh, absolutely.
To not,
if you have your home, see that's the thing. You know, I was talking about this yesterday. The way I feel like if Temple says, all right, hey, we're gonna put it on Geezy Field. You know, no destruction or anything like that. Like, I feel like, you know, hey, okay, so we cross off the, you know, taking of homes part of it, right? Certainly there will be more traffic. I mean, there's no way, yes, there will be more traffic. I saw something that also said that they want to do, retail redevelopment as well, which I think could be interesting, bring some new business to the area.
But would it be pushing out other business?
Right, exactly. So, you know, just all these things, you know, weighing these things, I think is interesting because, you know, you look at Pitt, right, and Heinz and the Steelers let them use the field for free.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, cool. You know, you look at other colleges that use, you know, football stadiums and they pay, you know, a fraction of what what the Eagles charge Temple, which it doesn't make sense to me why, you know, the stadium, I mean, part of it was paid for with, you know, public money, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, in theory, the city, I would like to think, should have some pull in deciding, you know, what it's used for. And I think that'll be interesting to see if Jim Kenney can kind of maneuver his way through that and get a deal. But from what you've heard, are the people in the community 100% opposed to a stadium? Like they don't want, there is nothing that the university can say that will make them feel better.
One of the quotations that I didn't use in my article is, we draw the line here, we cannot have a stadium. And that was from a community member. So, it's not up for debate. This stadium is just not going to happen with this, or will not happen with a happy community at least.
And see, that's my thing, right? I feel like if Temple wants it, they're going to say, all right, hey, we're just going to do it, right? And it's going to be like, hey, you know, try and stop us. You know.
It sounds like that, as they did not allow the community members into the Temple Student Government meeting.
Yeah. And, you know, I'm just sitting there wondering, you know, what if, you know, Jim Kenney all of a sudden says, all right, Temple, go ahead and build the stadium, right? Then then, you know, people who live in the community, they're like, well, who do we fight now? Do we fight Temple or do we fight the mayor, right? Because he's the one who wants to do this. And I feel like, I don't know, I feel like it could improve the neighborhood. I feel like there are compromises that can be made where it could actually, be beneficial, right? You know, Pat Kraft suggested using it for, high school football games and stuff like that.
That's pretty cool.
Sure, yeah, we'll use it for high school games, I guess. I don't know, maybe find something else you could use it for, right? You know, have events there or something like that. Community can have events there. Boom, you know, have a block party at the stadium or something like that. Hey, that's pretty cool, right? You don't have to shut down a street. And I feel like there are, little compromises that, could be made to kind of salvage the attitude towards the stadium. But, man, didn't find a single person that said, well, if they come and talk to us, we'll consider this.
Yeah. Another thing that I did ask is if they invited any Temple administration to their meeting, which they did not. They never had so it was almost a one-way street.
See, that's interesting. And then, so they didn't invite Temple administration, and then
to their meeting,
right?
And
then
they
Temple
were mad.
didn't invite them, and they were like, "No, we can't have any of that." See, that's what I think is so interesting. You know, we saw this a lot when we heard about some of the protests surrounding the ads on the Cecil B. Moore subway station, right? And they were complaining about that. And we talked about that on our show, and we're like, you know, do these people, do they ride the subway, or do they just want something to complain about? You know, what's going on here? Like, I feel like, I don't know, like, I feel like communication is not good. Like, where we're at right now, like, communication is not good. You know, we can't move forward where they're holding meetings, it's the community and the students without Temple administration, and then it's Temple administration and the students without the community.
Yeah.
Because then it's like we're leaving out a big block, like, of, you know, of parties in there. And I think, you know, like, this money, I think students are concerned that, you know, tuition will go up. I think that's one of their main concerns. But I don't know. Like, I feel like they're saying that this money will only be used for the stadium. Like, I don't know. Like, I just find this whole thing just fascinating. Like, why can't we work together?
Yeah.
Like, I don't know.
It is very cool to be able to see the community and students working together. That's something that, I mean, I am a freshman here, and I know you are also, and I haven't heard of a single way that we can even engage with the community other than what we're frequently told by Temple Police to be scared of the community.
Right. Yeah.
And that may affect the communication between the two parties.
Right. Because I don't know what you think about this, but I was talking about this yesterday, that if we build a stadium, are people going to be complaining about it, 15 years in the future? Or is it just going to be like, oh, like, this is part of life here, like, it's here?
Yeah.
Like, I mean, you look at University City with Penn and Drexel, right? And the amount of just immense gentrification that happened there. Basically on behalf of the city, because they wanted to redo West Philadelphia. And people don't really, like, talk about it. I mean, maybe it's because we're not there, but I think that, a large part of it is that, sometimes, you look at University City and you're like, wow, like, this is nice.
Yeah.
And the people are like, and then, people who live there realize, like, hey, this, like, actually was beneficial. Like, we can still live here, and now we have all this, like, new shopping and restaurants and whatever. And I think Temple can be the same way. I think it's just something needs to happen. I don't know what that is.
And I think important to note is maybe why nobody is questioning University City anymore is because everybody got displaced after. So those voices were not heard. And right now we have community members who do want their voices heard, and they're kind of going unheard.
Yeah. And I just, and like we said before, communication I feel like is just lacking. Both sides, I think, are at fault for this. And, you hate to see this because you really want this to be something that succeeds, right? Because, Temple, their football team is good.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not, that they're bad, but I don't know. Like, I don't know what the, solution is here. Something we're trying to do here, we want to know, what was the most interesting thing you found in this story through reporting on this story?
Most interesting thing.
Or something that surprised you, or something that someone said.
One thing that was interesting is even before the stadium, I interviewed a woman named Charlotte Savage, and I quoted her in my article, and she was telling me how last year she paid under $500 in property taxes. When she received her taxes this year, it was over $1,000. So it more than doubled, and she expressed a lot of concern about her elderly neighbors who have been in this community for 40, 50 years, and how, like, they're on fixed incomes. They're getting money from Social Security or pensions, and like, how they would pay for it. And if there was a stadium there, how much more would there? Right. And she's located very closely to where the stadium would be.
Yeah.
And so she, like, how much more would those property taxes go up if there was a stadium right down the street?
Yeah. Interesting. So, did you get the indication that, like, what if her property taxes didn't go up? Do you think she would be okay with it, or would she still be opposed to it, do you think?
I don't know. I didn't really...
Yeah.
She seemed pretty opposed to a stadium, but she did say that she just wants to be involved. Like, she just wants to be a part of the conversation. She doesn't want to be on the outside looking in to what's going to reshape her entire neighborhood.
Yeah, and I think that's a whole part. Like, people, I don't know, maybe they'd be more on board if they were involved and actually knew what was going on. Because, I wonder if, what they're doing can go forward without them. I mean, certainly, if they're going to do it, they're going to put it up. And, people are going to have to say, well, you know, that's a shame.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, I think that you know, that I don't know, because if once I think you are opposed 100% to something, I feel like there's a hard time like bringing you back. And I mean, maybe Temple. I don't know. What do you think? Do you think Temple's been doing a good job about trying to portray a positive image of the stadium?
I think that they're trying to.
Yeah.
I think that they're trying very hard, hence why they even had an information forum yesterday.
Right.
I mean, Monday.
Because, you know, I don't know what it's going to take. I don't know who could influence the people who live here and say, like, hey, like, this is going to be a great thing for the community. I don't know. I don't know if that's possible. Like, from what you're saying, it doesn't sound like it is.
Yeah.
I don't know.
There's definitely some work to do, and I think that just from how community members were speaking about how they're left on the outside, if maybe Temple and them could just build a bridge just to start somewhere on conversation about the stadium, maybe there would be some sort of what is the word?
Agreement,
yeah.
Because I'm thinking, right, Temple, you know, extends a hand, say, hey, how about you extend your hand back and we'll work together on this. Because I think as it is right now, Temple seems kind of like a large, just giant that's going to come in here, right? But I think Temple has done a lot of good for the community, right? You know, an expanded Temple Police Patrol adds, you know, 130 officers to the community that, you know, helps to keep them safe.
Yeah.
I mean, they police all the way out to 20th Street, all the way up to Susquehanna, and as far down as, you know, Jefferson, I think. And, you know, that is beneficial, right? Without Temple here, I mean, they provide a good influence in this community for the most part. So I think it'll be interesting to see how this goes forward. Jillian, thanks for coming in to join us on this inaugural edition of Beyond the Lead. Hopefully something that continues in the future. Hopefully you'll be back.
Hopefully so. Thanks so much for having me.
No problem.
Some statistics are surprising, some are unbelievable, and some are simply unacceptable. Right now, nearly 30% of U.S. students aren't finishing high school. Nearly 30%. And that's the average. In many places, it's even higher than that. And fixing it is a responsibility that we all share. This is President Obama, and I urge everyone, not just parents, but friends and neighbors and family members, to take responsibility for encouraging the high school students in your communities, to support them, challenge them, push them a little, and do whatever it takes to help them make it through. Because this is one statistic we simply can't afford to ignore.
You can do your part by going to boostup.org and sending an email, a text message, or even a wake-up call to a student at risk of dropping out. Go to boostup.org and provide the boost that's needed to make it to graduation. A message from the U.S. Army and the Ad Council.
People are always talking about the stock market, always looking to invest in a good opportunity, something with the potential to grow. So what if you could invest in the future of kids, like a stock? Not the kind of stock where you invest to make money, but a stock for social change. A whole new kind of investment called Better Futures. When you invest, it helps students like me go to college, which ends up making the future better for everybody. I could be the first college graduate in my family, the first district attorney from my neighborhood. And if I'm the first, then maybe there will be a second and a third. This can really be the start of something. My name is Charles, and I'm your dividend.
Invest in better futures with UNCF. Visit uncf.org/invest. A mind is a terrible thing to waste, but a wonderful thing to invest in. A public service announcement brought to you by UNCF and the Ad Council.
What is that?
Oh, it's my time machine.
Does it work?
Sure, just hit this button.
Whoa, dinosaurs, cool.
Or we can go here.
Hey, that's Napoleon.
Oui.
Or we can go to the future.
Wow, hey, you have this nice house. Do I have a nice house?
No, you didn't save any money, always spent it on vacations and stuff.
If only there was a way I could go back in time and correct that bad habit.
Yep.
Okay, the time machine is not real, but the saving thing is. Get in the habit of putting some of your money in savings each week through a 401k, savings account, or financial investments. Put away a few bucks, feel like $1,000,000. For free ideas and easy tips on saving, go to feedthepig.org. That's feedthepig.org.
What does this crazy little button do?
This message brought to you by the American Institute of Certified Public Accountants and the Ad Council.
My name is Tom Thornton.
And my name is Cindy Thornton. We've been married 38 years. We're retired, and this is how we live united.
We play golf and we travel, but we also decided we were going to give to and volunteer with United Way at our community free health clinic.
I do the nursing at the clinic.
I work the front office, checking in patients, greeting them, making them feel comfortable.
United Way is how we contribute because we know our time and money are going to the right places, the places that need it most and implement it best.
Judging by the thank yous we get at the clinic, I'd say we're doing the right thing with our retirement too.
We even get a few bless yous. It's incredible.
We're Tom and Cindy Thornton. We volunteer at our community free health clinic, so we don't just wear the shirt.
We live it.
Give, advocate, volunteer, live united. Go to liveunited.org. Brought to you by United Way and the Ad Council.
Hey, it's Nicole from Chew in the Morning on Mix 106, and you're listening to WHIP.
Welcome back. You're listening to WHIP Radio, Philly's #1 college radio station. You're tuned into Beyond the Lead here in the Rational Radio time slot, 3 to 4 p.m. every Wednesday. Something new we're doing, a joint venture here between WHIP Radio and the Temple News, providing an in-depth look at Temple News articles here on WHIP Radio. So we've already had some great conversations today. We have one more to get to, and this is something that's really, really cool. We now have some artistic renderings of the new Temple Library that were released. And now here to talk more about that is Leanne Parsons, who wrote an article about it in this week's edition of the Temple News. Leanne, thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
So talk a little bit about the library, what you learned through reporting this, kind of what it's going to look like, when it's going to be completed, stuff like that.
Well, my editor, the news editor of the Temple News, Steve Bonell, and I, we did a double byline, which means that we reported on the same story and wrote it together. And I spoke with the project manager of Snowhetta, the architecture firm that designed the library. His name is Nathan McRae. And he told me a little bit about the architecture. He used a lot of architectural terms, which isn't something that I'm necessarily familiar with. But he's spoke a bit about it's going to have 4 floors, I believe, and the top will be like a reading room and eye level with the bell tower.
Wow.
Which will be pretty cool.
Yeah.
And the main feature of it, he said, was these wooden domes, which are basically pointing towards the entrance, so it's always a way to orient yourself. And from the pictures that we were sent by, that Snowhetta sent us, lots of open space, lots of natural light, which I won't be around to see it because I'll be graduating before it opens in 2018. But it looks really beautiful, and I'm excited for the students who do get to use it.
Yeah, so I saw, one thing, it said that it was modeled after, Greek institutions of education, and I was like, wow, that's kind of cool, I guess. And then, once I saw the inside of it, I was like, whoa, Like this is going to be the real deal. Like I think it's going to be awesome. And that's what I saw the thing about the domes. You mentioned the domes, so you can always orient yourself. I was so confused when I was reading that. I was like, what the heck is this? Do you know anything like kind of about them, how they're going to work, like how people orient themselves like with them?
Well, from my understanding, when you walk in, there's sort of a main dome, I guess.
Okay, yeah.
And then sort of throughout the library, they'll kind of be positioned in such a way that when you look, you can find the entrance again by following them back.
Okay.
I might be incorrect about that.
Yeah.
But from what I understand, that's the general principle.
Yeah.
But it's interesting. I don't think I've seen architecture like this myself.
Yeah.
Not that I'm like an architecture buff.
Yeah.
But it seems pretty interesting. I think on campus right now, the building that I like the most is the Cirque, because of all that natural open light, and it's sort of when you're in the lobby, you can look straight up and you see all the floors. Well, not all of them, because there's the elevator, but you know, I just think it's really beautiful. And I've been in some of the offices. Again, natural light, big windows, and that was, I believe, to save on energy, so you don't have the lights on all the time. I think they're also they want to do a green roof. Which is kind of a newer thing. It's sort of come out in the last, few years with that being popular. At my high school, we had kind of a green roof, but it wasn't as maintained as well as it could have been.
Okay.
But the inspiration for it was there, and I appreciate that because, seeing green is always nice, especially when you're in a city.
That's right. Yeah. No, and that's one of the things talking about the Cirque, where a lot of the computer science classes are and stuff like that. I was just saying that I think being in a city, I want to see more modern buildings on campus, right? Whereas if I'm looking at a school that's maybe out in the not countryside, but maybe more suburban, that the kind of classical style of architecture is nice. Which when I saw the front of this library, like all glass, like the curves that are up, like kind of wings in the front, like when you walk in, I was like, wow, this is like majestic, where it's gonna be, and I think that's really cool, and it's gonna be massive, just by looking at some of the pictures. What are students saying about it?
We haven't talked to a whole lot of students, but from what we understand, when we did speak with them, when plans first came out, like saying that we're gonna build a new library. I think people are excited about the new landscape. Visualized Temple is the overall landscaping plan for like the quad. People are thinking of building, a fountain, again, lots of green space.
Right.
And knocking down Barton Hall and the old buildings over there, which I think they look like they're built in the 80s.
Yeah.
Which isn't, to knock on 80s architecture, but it's a little dated. So this new, like you said, modern architecture definitely makes it look more interesting, and I think that, or hopefully, students will respond well to it. I think, for me personally, again, this is not speaking for the Temple Knights, but just speaking for myself, I think investing in things like libraries and things like research facilities are really important, especially to university. And Temple always talks about being, a Research One university. And so I think it's important to show that.
Yeah. And, one of the things that lots of people are talking about is that now they're going to have robots retrieving the books. And people are like, well, no, this is going to take away the fun of students being able to wander through the stacks and find a book. And speaking from having wandered through the stacks last semester for a history paper, I was like, how the heck do you do this? I'm like trying to find the numbers on the books, and I'm like, oh man, I think I'm in the wrong section. I'm walking around all over the place. Now to have a robot just be able to punch it in, I don't know, it seems kind of cool. What are people saying about that?
That's not a feature we've necessarily explored a whole lot. Again, I think this will, having, robotic arm kind of like, at one of those vending machines for ice cream, just sucks it up and gives it to you. I think that accessibility-wise, that will be really good for maybe students who don't necessarily have the time to wander through, or it's easier for people who can't reach the higher shelves.
Yeah.
Sort of the little things like that you might not think make a huge difference, but they do.
Mm-hmm.
Hopefully that the library will still have the option to go to and pick out books for yourself, because I think that's always a unique experience.
Mm-hmm.
Again, speaking from personal experience, I worked in the Harvard University Medical Library over the summer a couple years ago, and a lot of my job was shelving books, cataloging and I didn't do the restoration.
Yeah.
I put the plastic coverings on them, but that was kind of an interesting experience for me, especially because we kind of do live in a digital age. Yeah. And I'm not saying one is better than the other. I think they can go hand in hand. But yeah, I think that feature will be interesting to see.
And so now, kind of transitioning into another aspect, has the university said how much it's going to cost?
Yes. The project will cost $190 million, and $140 million of which comes from state funding.
Interesting. And are they optimistic for it? Anybody from the university saying, like, yeah, we're really excited for this to be built? What are their reactions been if you talk to them?
Well, Margaret Carney, who is the university architect, she worked with Snowhetta, and also the dean of libraries, Joe Lucia. He also worked with them pretty closely. And as a university architect, I would imagine, that she's Nathan McRae from Snowhetta said she kind of had the vision for it.
Yeah.
And she's also the one who, last week we did an article about, not last week, a couple weeks ago, we did an article about the new quad and how students are actually designing it, which is pretty cool.
Yeah.
And Joe Lucia, the dean of libraries, he, I'm sure, would find new technology and new study spaces for not only the students but for his own job to be sort of to be exciting.
And so we're calling this series Beyond the Lead. What was one of the most interesting things that you found out from doing this piece? One of the things maybe most interesting, something that surprised you, something you're like, wow, that's like, kind of cool, kind of stands out maybe.
The architecture company itself was interesting. It is from Norway originally, but they have offices in New York and Philadelphia. And when I was online and looking at, people to contact, they have, their emails and numbers listed and things like that. And then it also says what office they're based in. Some people are based in upwards of 2 and 3 offices, which kind of is interesting, because I remember going to school with these girls, and their parents were architects, and I remember they did a lot of traveling.
Okay.
And I always wondered why you had to travel as an architect, because I was always like, well, can't you just, and this is just, again, being ignorant about architecture, but, I'm like, can't you just, sit and you draw it yourself, and but I think it's, for this, it's important to get a feel of where you're designing.
Yeah.
So, and Nathan McRae said that this building will be different from anything else on campus, but also fit into it, which, again, is kind of a concept that I'm not necessarily familiar with, but I suppose we'll find out when it is built.
Yeah, speaking of fitting in, do you think it'll be able to fit in where it's positioned right on Leocourse Walk? Because you have kind of like an older style of architecture right in those shops, just a very classical, simple style, in those, Saxby's and Philly Pretzel Factory that are in over there. And then you have the old stone architecture right down on Paulette Walk. And then you're going to have this just absolute modern behemoth that's put in the ground. Do you think it's going to be able to blend in well there?
I think it's good to have a mixture of different types of buildings.
Mm-hmm.
Similar to Philadelphia itself, we have a lot of old architecture. It's an old city.
Right.
But then we also have a lot of new buildings, and it kind of all manages to blend together, and makes it, I think, more interesting and dynamic. And for me personally, one of the reasons why I came to Temple was when I visited, I liked only a chorus walk, all little shops, and I was able to sit and like watch people walk by, and it kind of, if you were to just take like a snapshot of just the buildings, it kind of looks like a street of like a village.
Yeah.
Which, I don't know if other people feel the same way.
Yeah,
but
no, I mean, I can totally see that, yeah.
That was kind of the vibe I was getting. So I think if you have both that and also the sense of like, academia and, modern technology, I think it makes it a little more interesting and not just you get one type of thing over another. Because like you were saying, suburban campuses often just have this really old architecture, like Gothic cathedrals and whatnot, which are beautiful and I love them. But I think for Temple, because we have such a large student body and a diverse population, it sort of fits that we would have diverse architecture as well. That's kind of a funny analogy.
Yeah,
but,
yeah. No, absolutely. And then just one last question. Do we know what is going to happen to Paley once the library is built?
Right now, that's still in discussion. It could be used for office space. It could be used for more class spaces. Could be used for studios for, like kind of similar to breakout rooms, kind of like that.
Oh, okay, yeah.
But I think that it could have multiple uses. I mean, it's a great building.
So, it's tons of
like
once the library moves out, like it's going to be a lot of space for kind of whatever.
Yeah. We don't really have a sense of exactly what's going to happen, but class or study space is one of a couple options on the table. But it'll be interesting to find out.
Yeah, certainly. Well, Leanne, thanks for joining us here.
Thank you so much.
So you are listening to Beyond the Lead on WHIP Radio, Philly's #1 college radio station, taking up the time slot of 3 to 4 p.m., right where Rational Radio would normally sit. We thank you for tuning in to this first edition of the show. Hopefully, we will have much more to come, bring you all deep, in-depth analysis of articles published in the Temple News as we continue this joint venture between WHIP Radio and the Temple News, working with our campus media partners. So, I'm Ryan Frascella. Have a great day, everybody. We will see you next Wednesday.